Hello and good afternoon, Ambassador to Singapore, Ambassador of Japan to Singapore, Your Excellency Hiroshi Ishikawa. I'm so sorry about that. Our esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, as well as our audience watching this on YouTube, very warm welcome today to the special preview of Mark of Empire, Kingdoms of the East. I'm Elizabeth Neo, your host. Now, today we will be showing you the highlights from the first 3 episodes of the series that will broadcast on CNA officially from tomorrow onwards. So you can catch it over the next 4 consecutive days at 9 p.m. Now, the episodes that you will be seeing will focus on the Japan bits. So I do hope you're excited for that. We know how Singaporeans love Japan so much, we get to view this story through Peter Lee. He is a scholar, curator, and author. And Peter managed to travel to Japan and South Korea earlier this year to look for answers. And where he also met with 4 distinct groups and nations. So the preview that you're about to watch, we'll see Peter explore the mighty Tokugawa shogunate. We'll see Peter take the trip up north to Hokkaido to meet with Ainu descendants. Then we'll see him make his trip down south where he meets the vibrant Ryukyu kingdom that emerged about some 600 years ago. Some very impressive stuff. But of course, hearing this from me is not going to be as exciting as hearing this from the man himself. So Peter, could you come up for a second? Tell us a little bit about your experience, with this season 2.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm just so overwhelmed. I can't believe I got this new job. Thank you, CNA. Thank you, IFA Media. It was quite an incredible experience to travel from Shiretoko, right at the northern edge of Hokkaido, right down to the small island called Kume Island, right in the south of Okinawa, and to experience history through all these people's stories. And it wasn't just about kings and rulers, it was about communities, music, martial arts, and ultimately, I felt what was the real privilege was to learn history through stories. And at the end of the day, I think that's what history should be. It should be stories told to us by people and human stories. And I hope we managed to convey that idea of history, not as something scary that we only read in a textbook, but through various experiences. And every story that we hear of the past is history, and we should embrace this as something that's part of our lives anyway. So,
well, I'm sure you guys are really excited to hear more of these human stories and see for yourselves the excitement, the adventure that Peter's had over a couple of months. So without further ado, I'd like to start the screening of the special preview of the Mark of Empire, Kingdoms of the East.
Hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
I'm in Japan, one of the world's top economies and cultural giants. That's also known as one of the safest places in the world, with law-abiding citizens and one of the lowest crime rates. But over 400 years ago, there were more guns here than in any other country on Earth. In the hands of the nation's iconic warriors, the samurai. To find out more, I'm meeting modern practitioners of the traditional discipline of Hojutsu. This is an old samurai art, and I would never have expected the use of a gun. There's a really strong smell of sulfur, and you combine that with the boom and crackle. It's quite an overwhelming experience. These sharpshooters have 30 minutes to fire 13 rounds for a shot at the Portugal Cup, a competition named after Portuguese explorers who first brought guns to the nation in 1543. We have here an old master, and he's very patiently going through the motion of loading his shot. Takashi Aoki has been a practitioner for almost half of his 80 years.
これは火縄式っていう今申しまして、木綿のロープに火をつけて、それで点火するような装置ですね。引き金を引くとこれが落ちるっていう。各大名の、主力武器が鉄砲だった。次の弾を込めるまでに時間がかかる。それを克服するために大人数で撃つっていう形を取ったんだろうと思います。
When these weapons first arrived, Japan was in a constant civil war that had lasted close to 100 years. And over the next decade, its blacksmiths copied and manufactured over 300,000 guns to arm the battling warlords. Luckily, laws for antique weapons are more relaxed here, so I can handle them.
はい、それでいいです。
But instead of real gunpowder, I'm using cornstarch. So fill up the flash pan and then use the edge of this little flask to flatten it. And when everything is perfect, you pull the trigger. It's really heavy. My arms are killing me. It's about 4 kilos, and I'm so near the sound of it when that boom. I mean, how do they not go deaf? Firearms like these transformed Japanese warfare in the 16th century. To find out what happened next, I'm in the city of Nagoya, birthplace of the nation's most celebrated military commanders. I'm at the grounds of the 400-year-old Nagoya Castle. Doesn't it just look magnificent? There are people in period costume entertaining tourists with their fancy capes and samurai style. Konnichiwa.
よう参った。お主がピーターか。
はい。
わしは織田信長である。
豊臣秀吉。
徳川家康である。
You guys look amazing. What are you doing here?
我らは400年前から蘇った小野府集団。わしら3人は若き頃から共に戦をし、この日の本の平和に貢献した。
The leader of the group is Oda Nobunaga, Japan's first unifier.
織田信長。わしは1534年から1582年まで生きたんじゃ。わしは戦で負けて命を落としてしまう。いわゆる革命者であったがゆえに強気な性格が今でも伝えられておる。
The next unifier was Toyotomi Hideyoshi.
太閤豊臣秀吉。わしは信長様亡き後、この戦乱の世がいろいろと戦が各地で起きておったんだ。その意志を継ぎ、この国をまず整えたものがわしと言われておる。さりながら数々の失敗をし、結果として徳川殿に全て整えられたものとされておるかな。
and that left you to be the ultimate victor.
ほうじゃ、わしは何もしておらんぞ。そんなことはない。
そんなことはない。
そんなことはない。そんなことない。
So basically, without the three of you, we wouldn't have Japan today.
そうじゃ。
So who killed the most people?
わしは誰一人殺しとらん。嘘つけ。
嘘じゃ。
三英傑。
I love their showmanship. This is history live. We shouldn't really think of it as just a very serious subject. We should be having fun and feel connected to the past. This is the Arai Way Station, sort of a highway stop where you could eat, bathe, and stay for the night. But before proceeding further, you had to pass through this magnificent gate towards the Arai checkpoint. Inside, passage was by no means guaranteed. This would have been the office where travelers and their goods would have been inspected. We have officials doing the interrogation, plus these rather fearsome soldiers here. Guns, women, injured people, and dead bodies were not allowed to pass without proper documentation. They were very strict. The Arai checkpoint was just one of 53 way stations dotting the Hokkaido road to monitor travelers. The common classes, including artisans, farmers, and merchants, were discouraged from traveling as part of strict rules designed to maintain order and stability. So you had to have a very good reason or be very important to travel. I'm tracing the history of Japan's Tokugawa shogunate that unified the nation in the 17th century and maintained peace through an iron authority over commoners and regional lords alike. But a dangerous new influence was spreading, carried aboard foreign merchant vessels. I'm in the city of Hirado, at an old Dutch trading post that's now a museum. Giving me a tour is its director, Yoshiharu Okayama.
こちらがオランダのリーフデ号で400年前に日本に初めて来たオランダの船です。
The first visits by the Portuguese in the mid-16th century were closely followed by British and Dutch traders half a century later, who brought with them exciting new goods like this armor.
これもともとオランダ製でオランダから輸入したものを日本でアレンジしてます。
It's really a nice hybrid. The helmet and the kind of collar looks sort of completely Dutch, but there are elements that have clearly been adapted in Japan.
そうです。肩当てとかその草ずり
Would this actually have been worn?
使うよりもこれは飾る用コレクション用として作ったものです。
And with Tokugawa rule ending civil wars, local lords could look to other matters like their personal style.
これは甲冑の上に羽織る衣装なんですね。
I know this very well. It's a jacket made of Indian chintz, also called a kalamkari. Made in India, exported to Japan, and made into this samurai garment worn over armor. It is really splendid.
日本の武将たちはこういったアジアのデザインというのは非常に好みまして、個性を出すためにこういった目立つような衣装を作るのが流行っていたわけなんですね。
So from warriors to fashionable gentlemen.
そうです。
Japan enjoyed free-flowing trade with Europe in the early 17th century, a period whose impact still lives on. To see how, I'm visiting a sweet shop that boasts a 500-year history called Tsutaya. Toshiyuki Matsuo is showing me how they make a local delicacy called katsudos, with a recipe his family have kept for 24 generations.
昨日焼いたカステラなんですけど、この卵の黄身につけていきます。染み込まないようにするのがポイントですね。
I see. Castella is this wonderful Portuguese cake. The one characteristic is the egg yolk. So it's a day old because it needs to be dry.
そうですね。大航海で硬くなったカステラを平戸に着いた方たちがこうやって食べると美味しいですよって伝わったのが僕カスオスだと考えています。
Next, the pieces of cake are dropped into a pot of boiling syrup.
This is like deep frying it in sugar water.
そうですね。よくねこれサラダに使ってるんじゃないかと言われるんですけど油は一切使ってないんですよね。
Yeah, I can smell the syrup and the egg. This really reminds me of desserts we have back home in Southeast Asia. A lot of egg yolk and very sweet, and this all comes from Portuguese influence.
And after it's cooled comes the magic.
This is such a wonderful idea. An eggy cake rolled in more egg and dipped in more sugar.
With that, the kasados is ready.
So beautiful. You'd think that after being soaked in syrup and then rolled in sugar that it'd be so sweet, but it isn't. It's soft and fluffy on the inside and crunchy on the outside. It's a perfect combination. I love how local people adapted novel ingredients and recipes to make them their own. So much so that many today may not realize the foreign origins of their favorite dish or dessert. History is awash with such a mishmash of influences, and uncovering these ties is always exciting. This is my first time here, and it's clean and well ordered like the Japan I know. But there are some differences, like these beautiful palm trees. I feel like I'm in Hawaii.
This is Kokusai Dori, or International Street. With 30 US bases stationed here, there's a palpable American vibe. And there's a local fusion snack I just have to try.
いらっしゃいませ。こちらへどうぞ。
Konnichiwa.
こんにちは。
This is really exciting. It's got so many things on the menu.
こちらの黄色い部分が卵ですね。で、下の方がスパム、ポークになっておりますね。
Oh my god, spam, magic word. I love it. I'll have that, please. What a treat. Wow. Look at this. It's like an onigiri reimagined as a sandwich. With rice, egg, and spam. It is so good. A fantastic combination. 100% approve.
The American influence on the island of Okinawa dates back to after World War II. But there are also reminders of an older heritage.
This really reminds me of a Chinese guardian lion, but you see it everywhere, from shop fronts, signs to souvenirs.
These protectors, called Shisa, a mix between a lion and dog, were first introduced from China over 500 years ago to ward off bad spirits. A local artist who goes by Tensai or Genius Mitsuo is going to show me how they are crafted.
こっちに顔、ここですね。
Okay.
繊維同士が絡むように一回に締めると。これは漆喰で繊維が見えますかね。黄色い部分はサンゴから取った石灰ですね。
I see.
そしたら口を開けましょう。ガオ。口が開いてるのがだいたいオス、閉じるとメスって言われてますね。いい感じですよ。
The material, it's soft, very wet, very malleable.
sort of getting to look like a four-legged mythical beast.
シーサーは沖縄では神様なんで自分で作るとは言わないんですよ。純粋な心で手を動かしてると次第に神様がそこに現れてくる。
Okay, so you must have the right attitude to make a good shisa.
Next is the tail, which uses a piece of tile that's a link to the past.
もともとは家を作った時に出た割れた瓦とかで屋根を葺く職人さんが作ったのがスタートですね。垂直に立てますね。だいたい作った人に似ます。ヤッホー。
Getting the eyes round. And then it's gonna have nostrils just like mine. This is a mini me. Same. Yeah. It looks like quite a happy, slightly sleepy Shisa. That's really me. I've grown up with the image of guardian lions, but they're so much more serious. Here, they're just fun and approachable. This is my kind of guardian deity.
Okinawa is a friendly tourist destination today, but the remote island on the western edge of the Pacific Ocean was once a place of outcasts, castaways, and warlords. I'm interested to find out how society here evolved.
About 1,000 years ago, the people here turned from hunting, fishing, and gathering to farming and built simple walls to protect their villages. Soon, local rulers called Aji came to prominence and enclosed their households in larger stone walls. But before long, they were brought to heel by powerful overlords who built even larger fortifications as a testament to their supremacy.
And this is the grandest of them all. Nakijin Castle was built in the 13th century, the stronghold of the powerful Hokkaido kingdom. I'm getting special access to a storage vault with evidence of how people here lived at the time. My guide is resident archaeologist Yasushi Tamashiro.
これは中国の奥山の王様が使っていたと考えられるこれの破片になりますね。これぐらいになるやつですね。
So this is 600 years old, a beautiful celadon, and it still has the gloss. The interesting thing is you find very similar trade goods from China in Southeast Asia, and we even have shards in Singapore like this.
おそらくこれにお酒を入れて、これから注いで飲んでる。お酒にまつわる焼き物はたくさん出てますね。
Yeah, that's a lot of sake.
もう大酒飲みだったかもしれません。
Even more fascinating is where their alcohol came from.
This would have been a really big jar.
はい、タイの焼き物になります。
From the Ayutthaya period?
いえ、そうですね。
Wow, this is heavily potted. There's some weight here. Clearly, this wasn't a showpiece.
これはこのコンテナで中に、お酒とか入れてきたようなことも言われていますね。沖縄のお酒がタイ米を使っているので、それの影響があるっていう考えられています。
I see. It's surprising how over 600 years ago, this island imported luxury ceramics like celadon from China and rice wine from Ayutthaya.
This isolated island enjoyed trade with nations as far away as China and Thailand, from as early as the 14th century. I'm on Kume Island, 90 kilometers west of Okinawa, to see how their powerful western neighbor became a crucial patron and trading partner.
The rise of Ryukyu coincided with a time when China was at war with the Mongols. And it turned out Ryukyu was rich in two resources that they sorely needed. One was sulfur for making gunpowder, and the other was horses.
Ryukyu's indigenous horses only grow to about 120 centimeters tall and trace back 15 centuries to Mongolian breeds. They were once used by farmers to carry heavy loads and were said to number in the tens of thousands. But with less need for them these days, fewer than 200 remain on the islands.
It feels sort of naturally oily and smooth. Do they like being brushed?
はい、やっぱりかけないところをやってあげると馬はすごく喜ぶ。
Fukutaro Inoue runs a local horse farm working to protect these animals.
小さい馬ではあるんですけど、すごくタフで、かつては物の運搬だったり、戦争に連れて行かれたり、今はもうそういう用途が一切ないので、観光をメインで考えていて、役割を与えることで、残していけたらというところで活動しています。
They are also keeping alive the use of a traditional bridle called a muge.
昔沖縄は鉄が取れないんで木を削り出して作った農具で、欧米で使うハミと違ってやっぱ口の中に物入れないんで、馬にとってストレスが少ないっていうところでこだわって使ってます。
Mugi-chan, you're so gentle. They're giving off really good vibes.
It seems an ideal time for a ride.
耳がいい生き物なので、声をかけるとやっぱり人の方に集中してくれる。いろんな声かけをしてあげるのがいいと思います。
So the trick is basically to douse them with tender loving care, brush them, talk to them, and they'll be your friend forever.
And finally, it's time to put our new bond to the test.
This feels wonderful. She's very gentle. What a wonderful experience.
And as island horses, there's nothing more natural than finishing off with a quick dip.
Here goes. This is like a horse ride and spa and a swim all at once. This is the life.
I'm Peter Lee, and I'm in Japan's southern edge, exploring the shallow reefs around the Ryukyu archipelago's Kume Island, for evidence of how, in the 15th century, the Ryukyu kingdom grew into a trading power.
It's so clear and beautiful here.
海底遺跡って呼ばれる場所になってまして、水深が5メートル未満のところにこの15世紀初頭のタイムカプセルが一隻ここには埋もってるっていう状況になります。
Archaeologist Akihiro Sunagawa is an expert in these waters that harbor traces of the Ryukyu kingdom's early dealings with China, down in the remains of a sunken treasure ship. The vessel may be long gone, but we're looking for pieces of its cargo.
So tell me what you found.
これはですね、中国の方で焼かれた、青磁碗になります。赤っぽいところが全てサンゴになっておりまして、でただこの真ん中のこの部分だけは土の部分が見えている状態になっています。
And then some remnant of, as you say, it's a celadon glaze, and it's all crackled. Are there lots of them?
はい、商品として当時持ち込まれているっていうことが考えられてるんですけど、おそらく何百何千と散らばっています。
This is such an incredible find. Here I am surrounded in paradise. It's like a holiday resort. And at the same time, there's so much history just below the surface. 600 years ago, ships sailed through exactly these waters. It would have looked just like this. And here I am now.
This research of Ryukyu's exchanges with China is just the tip of the iceberg, because it was the first journey of a massive trading network. This community class is practicing a much-loved Ainu tradition. This dance depicts a crane, the revered god of the marshes, as they flap their wings and take to the skies.
Breathless, I'm breathless. So it's a bit complicated. There's a lot of yodeling. And then you have this sort of a sound which imitates the cranes. Movements are simple, but to sing, keep the complicated rhythms and all together, you know, it's a challenge. They say all the Ainu really love this dance, and I can really see why. It's so much fun.
But this version of the song is different to what the Ainu know today. It's what 65-year-old researcher Nobuhiko Chiba was once taught by an old Ainu grandmother.
昔のおばあさんたちは本当にすごく優れたジャズメンみたいにアドリブがものすごく多いんです。なので決まったメロディーっていうのがなくて本当に引き出しがたくさんあっていろんなことをやるんです。で今はちょっと時代が下って日本の影響なのかわからないんですけども、昔の激しい踊りからちょっと静かになってます。例えば昔だったら「へしこを取る」「へしこを取る」ってこうやってたのが、今は「へしこを取る」「へしこを取る」踊りもシンプルになってます。でそれを今なんとか昔のように戻したいんですけれども。
It's wonderful to see Ainu arts being revived. But I really want to find out what it's like to be Ainu in Japan today. More than a century ago, the island of Hokkaido came under Japanese rule, nearly erasing the Ainu people and their way of life. But times are changing. In 2019, the Ainu finally gained legal recognition as an indigenous people. And more are finding ways to celebrate their identity.
23
23-year-old Maya Sekine is a YouTuber whose channel covers everything from Ainu language to cuisine and crafts.
今日はなんとシンガポールからピーターさんがいらしてくれてるので、イランからプテ。
What does that mean?
It's mean hello, like may I touch your heart?
I see.
Yeah.
I love studying languages, which can tell us so much about a people.
うおしっこて。It means like a fall in love.
うおしっこて。
う means like お互いに目と目の端がくっついて離れない。こて。
Okay, that's very powerful. So that's connecting eye to eye, heart to heart. I think connections are the most important, no?
Ainu language has a very beautiful meaning. 言葉から気づかされることってたくさんあります。そうですね。日本語でいいですよね。
Estimates say less than 100 people are conversant in the Ainu language today. Just another way their culture is nearly wiped out.
日本だと学校の教育で歴史では中心的なとこしか教えられなかったりとか、どうしてもこうアイヌのことを知るきっかけもなくて、アイヌってよくわかんないから怖いなとか、あとはアイヌってなんか汚いのかなとか、それこそ自然っていう言葉がないっていうアイヌの言葉で言うならば、多様性ってむしろ当たり前のことのはずなんですよね。 友人が親に私の友達がアイヌでこうやってテレビ出てんだよっていうのを親に伝えたら、実は私たちもアイヌなんだよっていうのを聞かされたっていう人とかもたくさんいて、アイヌっていうのは人間であって、よりこう自分のことを好きになる人が増えたらいいなと思って活動してます。
I personally love the idea of diversity, and I think what you're doing is really wonderful. It is very inclusive, and that's an important message, how to be humans.
Confidence in Ainu identity is being renewed. And to see how it's affecting the traditional way of life, I'm visiting Maya's family in Biratori, a mecca for Ainu crafts.
この木の皮を剥いでいくと、
okay.
これ荒皮をこれ取っちゃうんですね。これ煮たものなんですけど、
Yukiko Kaizawa is a master craftsman who uses tree bark to make cloth. It begins with soaking it in water until soft enough to handle.
水を切ってほしい。もっともっと。あ、いいかな。
And once it's dried, it's time to peel it back to its fine layers.
木の皮と思えないでしょ?
Yes, it's so fine and soft. Feels like paper in a sense, but it's much stronger. Can really feel the strength in this very thin fiber.
Then the individual layers are split into thin strips.
慣れてくるとこう2本指だとか使ってこういっぺんに裂いたりするんですけど。
This is the technique only for masters. There you go.
上手上手。
The two-finger technique.
上手。
The long strips are then twisted with the help of a special ingredient.
Good old Singapore saliva.
あのね。
The final step is to tie all the individual strings together and coil them into a ball of yarn.
How long has it taken you to make this?
裂くのと縛るので10日ぐらい。
Amazing. 10 days to do, and it's still only the beginning of the process to turn it into fabric.
This is a family workshop. While Yukiko-san weaves traditional textiles from her yarn, her daughter, Maki Sekine, specializes in embroidery. But official support for their traditional craft was hard-won.
100年の歴史を証明しないと伝統的工芸品の指定って受けられないっていうそういうものがあって、でもアイヌが文字を持たない民族、交渉文芸なんですよね。この指定を受けるまでには本当に苦労があって、母も東京の方に行ったりとか20年ぐらいはかかったよね。
すごい出品したりね、商品を分かってもらえるために。
But their efforts finally bore fruit in 2013, when they gained Japan's first official recognition as an Ainu craft, leading to a boost in demand.
We have here a very typical story of a small community on the wane and how legislation has led to a revival. Material culture is the most tangible expression of a community. It's so imbued with history, memories, and bark fiber, bast fiber they call it. Not many communities still make this, so this is really special.
The Ainu had a deep relationship with their natural world. And to see how that mentality is making an impact today, I'm traveling north to the Shiretoko Peninsula, one of the most untouched corners of Hokkaido. I'm heading into the mountains with veteran guide and Shiretoko native Mitsuki Matsuda.
Wow, look at the mountain view. Beautiful.
We're looking for something I've never seen, a bear in the wild.
Oh, wow, what's that?
これですね、エゾシカの毛なんですけれども、お尻の部分ですね、この白い毛はですね、冬毛の毛なんですけど、今これから夏毛に変わります。
So this time of the year, there's a lot of it everywhere?
これからもっともっとこの落ちているのを見ることあります。
The Ezo deer was almost hunted to extinction for its hide, but has made a comeback, as have populations of some of the 300 other species that live here, including the apex predator and Ainu's top kamui, the bear, revered as an embodiment of the mountain god.
これ見ていただくと、これ熊の爪痕です。
Wow. What do they do to leave these marks?
山ぶどうっていう、熊の大好物がの実ですね。それを食べるために登った爪痕だと思います。
Wow. Are there many bears around here?
半径400メートル以内に10頭以上いることもあります。
That sounds like a lot. Should I be worried?
熊に会う可能性というのは十分にあります。ただそんなに心配しなくても大丈夫です。こちらの行動が間違わなければ襲われるということはないので、熊が止まってる、もしくはあまりこちらを気にしないようだったらどんどん離れていくっていうのは必要です。
I see. Well, definitely don't climb up trees.
Since regular bear culls were abolished in 1990, their populations on Hokkaido are thought to have doubled. And while coexistence between bears and humans remains a challenge, the traditional worldview of the Ainu is a guiding compass.
昔アイヌの人たちはですね、自然大事に思うっていう部分と、もう一つはやっぱり恐れるっていう気持ちもあったんですよね。無制限に自然から搾取するんではなくてですね、やっぱりアイヌの人たちのように神様からの贈り物っていうふうにですね考えて、大事にそれをいただくっていうですね、そういう考え方っていうのが必要になってくるかなと思います。
It's good to see both Hokkaido's Ainu and its natural environment making a comeback. I didn't find a bear on the hike, but I'm not giving up. I'm taking a boat trip around the peninsula in hopes of ticking off my bear bucket list.
The water is very calm. The air is so crisp. Boatman is stopping at some places or slowing down, keeping a lookout.
Bear watching cruises are a novel tourist draw that's giving Shiretoko's fishermen a new avenue of work. But whether we see one is totally down to luck. And suddenly...
There it is, yeah. Right on that top. It's moving up that slope. It's busy foraging for its greens. Far away enough for me to feel safe, but you can see very clearly every movement. Such a treat to see a bear in its completely natural environment. Cruises like these are perhaps the most harmless way of bear watching for both humans and bears. While human-bear conflict is still a concern, there's growing awareness of the need to find better ways to coexist with the natural world. And that, I'm sure, is something the Ainu ancestors would approve of.
Well, I really wasn't sure. We got to find out if Peter saw that bear at the end of the preview. So thanks to the producers for including that bit and the questions answered. I just want to let you know that we're going to start the discussion with our guests right now. We will be taking questions once again. If you have any questions you'd like to direct to any of the guests in particular or to all of them, just put up your hands. We'll come by with a mic. And also to our audience watching this from YouTube, do make use of the chat function on your screen. We will have producers looking out for your questions. So can I have my guests to come on? Let's begin this exciting discussion. Also, do you remember the episodes air in full starting tomorrow on CNA, 9 p.m. over the next 4 days. So do look out for that. Well, I'm going to introduce our guest today, Dominic Young. He's a series producer and director at IFA Media. Next up, of course, Shamala Rajendran, executive editor at CNA Media Corp. And you know Peter Lee, of course, host of season 2. Peter is also independent scholar and author. And last but not least, Clement on. He is a chief curator at Asian Civilisations Museum. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Now, the first question, I think I'm going to put it to Sham. As executive editor of this show, why did CNA go ahead of season 2?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. I have to say it's a fantastic turnout. So thank you for spending your Friday afternoon with us and with us and Peter, I'm sure, the star. We wanted to do a season 2 because there was just so much positive feedback from season 1. Season 1 was shown in 2019. You can catch it on YouTube. And we covered Southeast Asian countries like Cambodia, Philippines, Indonesia, and Myanmar. And we had so much positive feedback. There was just so much interaction on our YouTube page where people were just astounded about the history of their own country, and others who felt that we know so much about the Roman Empire, or even Western empires, but we just don't know that much about where we are in Asia. And we felt there's a great need for such stories. So when we decided on a season 2, we were actually thinking of where we should go because there are more stories to be told in Vietnam, Laos. But then we decided on Japan and South Korea because we felt that just focusing on one area and then allowing us to travel the length of that space will give us some fantastic stories, and it did.
Well, Peter, you're back as host for season 2. What is being done differently in terms of how you're telling the stories? What lessons did you learn from season 1 that you've incorporated in season 2?
I think the dangerous thing for me was being too game to do stuff in season 1, and I think they saw the potential that I would just blindly jump into something. So a lot of these were planned without my sort of pre-knowledge, and Dom, who's been a wonderful guide throughout all this time, would just give me just a little brief hint, and then so I think there was a lot more of that. And that was fun, just go in and basically just wing it. Yeah.
What were some of the exciting bits? Did you enjoy keeping Peter in suspense and surprising him the day itself?
Yeah, it's the best part of the job. But seriously, I think Peter makes such a great host because he's so intrepid. We ask you to do anything. You jump on the back of an elephant, you're up there. This time on a horse, maybe slightly less scary. But Peter never says no, so he makes our life really easy to work with. But another thing about Peter is he's really an ideal host because he knows a lot about the area, but he's not an expert in the time period we're talking about precisely. So he's also sort of on a journey to learn. So he has a lot to say and lots of insightful comments to make, but he's also learning. So I think that's something the audience can pick up on, his candid reactions.
I mean, may I say that when Dom first approached me about the job, the first thing I said was, I don't know anything about ancient history, so I'm the wrong person. And he said, no, we want somebody like this who doesn't know too much. So I said, okay.
Yes, it's actually
I fit the bill then.
Yeah, it's my favorite part, Peter, of the shoot is, at the end, after all that difficult filming we have, all the frenzied hard part, then I ask you, how was it? And it's always a joy because, Peter, he might give you something uplifting and funny, like you saw just now, or he might give you something quite deep and insightful. You can never tell, but it's a real talent to be able to roll, those two extremes, and it really helps the audience keep, click with the content. So thank you.
So the reactions were very, they were real, they're very raw. He's really surprised. Really, tell us about the gun, the shooting range, right? So you said it was very loud. There's the smell in the air. How did you feel? Did you there was definitely some, reaction when you shot. How did that make you feel?
Yeah, usually I get very worried when I find out the brief sort of a description of what got to do that day, and it's usually something I've never done before. And the last time I held a weapon was, NS, like whatever, 40 years ago or something. So it was really nerve-wracking, but I was very relieved because you need a license, so I was only allowed to play with flour, I think it was, yeah.
Cornstarch, yes, and an antique gun.
I'm such a klutz, I would have killed somebody maybe or something.
Would you say that was like one of the more difficult bits of this season? Because I have a question from our audience on YouTube asking, what were some of the more challenging bits filming this season?
In a way, everything is equally challenging because, so much of it I've never done before. I mean, this was my first experience on a horse. I've never ever got, I'm embarrassed to say, I've never got up on a horse before. I never tried martial arts to sort of like, do all these things. And you feel you got to, do something properly or not be such a disaster, right?
This season, I think most of the concern was on the COVID situation, and we actually chose these, Japan and Korea, because a lot of other areas were being closed down to any visitors, including film crew. So that's how we first, started to look into that corner of the world and found these 4 great stories there to tell. But once we were in the country, I think it was everything leading up to it was the most taxing bit, getting all the forms right, making sure we wouldn't be sent back outside Japan when we arrived, and the quarantining. But after that, it was pretty free-flowing, and Peter was on form as ever.
Yeah. Now, I was going to add that when we first wanted to do season 2, we actually looked at Southeast Asian countries. But because of COVID restrictions, so Southeast Asia was really closed off. And then we said, let's look east. And Japan and Korea was still accepting tourists, foreigners in. But then, soon as we decided on that, they decided to also go into lockdown. So we were trapped, and we waited. We waited for almost 6 months, I think, before the travel happened.
Yes.
And thankfully, the embassies and all the jumping through the different hoops of approvals came through. Yeah.
Yes, and it worked out because visually, talking from a production standpoint, we could film there in the summer as opposed to the middle of winter, which would have been a very different sort of visual mood as well. So it all worked out in the end. Yeah.
Yeah, was it, being able to enter, I suppose, at a time where it was pretty much a lockdown everywhere, would you say it was an advantage in a sense that there weren't tourists, as many tourists as there would not ordinarily have been, and then you're able to see and film without, say, obstruction and get access into more private areas, for example?
Well, for sure, because Japan had a very tight sort of net. So, if once you were allowed in, it was pretty much free reign once you got inside. The government didn't impose any lockdowns. I think famously they didn't even tell restaurants to close at night. They requested it, but they couldn't force anybody. So it was pretty free flowing. So yes, and then we could film. Even Shinjuku in Tokyo, it's usually full of tourists and all that, but it was much quieter. So we had a real good time once we were able to get in.
Yeah, so Dominic, on research and finding the stories for this season, why did you choose to focus on, Edo, Ryukyu, the Ainu people, as well as Joseon? What made these groups so special that you wanted to feature them this season?
Well, as I mentioned, we decided to have a look for COVID reasons initially, but then we soon found it was, it's just 2 countries, so we were wondering how will we do 4 episodes. But then we soon found there were 4 distinct stories to be told within these 2 countries, which made it quite ideal. So obviously you have Joseon and Tokugawa, which is the main Japanese islands, which are more well known, and people might know about them already. But then there are the 2 lesser known kingdoms to the north, and the Ainu people, and the Ryukyu kingdom to the south and the north of Japan. And we quite like that balance, having a couple in there that people may not have known about. And it's very timely as well, as it was mentioned in the show, the Ainu only gained official recognition in 2019 as a group to be protected by the government. So it's very current. And we think of Japan as really homogenous. And I think the Japanese also think of themselves as homogenous, but we were able to capture this growing sort of realization about their multi-ethnicity, multiculturalism that's starting to spread now. So it was a really great time to be able to film there, for sure.
I've got another question actually from a viewer on YouTube. This one is for Peter, and this person asks, what do you think is the defining feature of each of the 4 nations that you've covered this season?
The defining feature, for me, it was really being able to listen and experience history through the local community. I felt it was a privilege to be kind of a listener. So in a way, it was fun that I'm glad I wasn't the historian presenter just monologuing, and actually it felt like a nice exchange. And I think that to me was, I treasured as an experience from all the episodes, yeah.
Well, Clement, I'm sure you've got a lot to say as well. There's so many East meets West moments in history, and we get to witness some of them in Mark of the Empire. For example, in Gerardo, I think that old Dutch trading post that was later turned into a museum. We learn more about the first visits of the Portuguese to Japan, and then followed by the British and the Dutch traders that brought along a lot of exciting goods to Japan. Let's talk about why these visits were important. What kind of influences did they also bring along? And were there concerns that the rich culture of Japan could be diluted?
Well, thank you, Liz, for the question. That's quite a big question to begin with. These types of encounters and exchanges are extremely important for us to I guess, recount and remember. We talk about the Portuguese and the Dutch who brought a lot of influence to Japan. I guess just based on the few minutes of the exclusive screenings, we have seen the introductions of firearms into Japan, the introductions of certain European Portuguese sweets into Japan, but there are lots more to it. There is also about the languages as well that they brought into Japan that influence the vocabulary today. There is also the influence of you got to help me here right now. Brain is a little bit freezing, but what is it that, for example, tempura again, that we are so associated with Japanese cuisine, but that was also sort of introduced by the Portuguese who were there in Japan as well. So likewise, to find all this commonalities and shared connection, again, drawing from Dom's point about we think that, cultural hegemony is not really true. And to be able to understand that and see that and retrospectively think about our own culture, where we come from, what are all these shared artistic and cultural exchanges, I find that this is extremely important.
Of course, there are a lot of lessons and experiences and influences we glean from other cultures. But what about the concern of that, the Japanese culture could be diluted? Is that necessarily a bad thing?
Not at all. I believe that for every foreign and new ideas that were introduced to any culture, there is always 3 perspectives or 3 groups of people. One who is receptive, one who is opposing, and the third group which is pretty much sitting by the fence, not sure whether it's good or bad. I'm just going to wait and see how it goes. But from history, we know that how the turn of events for many different cultures and civilizations, we also realize that when a society is open, tolerant, and resilient about accepting and assimilating and internalizing some of these ideas, from where I come from as a museum, you see the birth of the creation of many beautiful cross-cultural works of art that is very often neglected or not very much mentioned because they kind of fit neither here nor there in one's culture. But these, again, remind us of the wonderful interactions that has happened placed.
Well, does anyone here have a question for any of the guests? Perhaps you'd like to ask how, did Peter get to take home the stone lion that he made? Yeah. What happened to the lion? And also how, the pastry that you had. Tell us
that was...
It looked so good. It was like so rich and
golden.
And
we the chef kindly gave us all of it, and we like yeah.
We had it for 3 days. That was all we ate for 3 days. Yeah.
Did you finish it before the 3 days or?
No, it was gone like in no time. It was so good. Yeah.
Did he share his secret family recipe?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all in the temperature, right? Of the syrup that had to be boiled at a very specific temperature and to create that sort of texture. I think, yeah. So yeah, he used the thermometer and everything.
So we got to get those kitchen tools to replicate the cake. Any other memorable moments from this season? Maybe any teasers that we could get beyond the 40 minutes that we had just now?
I would say, I mean, people were just so nice, and I particularly enjoyed the meeting the Kobudo people. So these were the martial arts group, and it's so interesting, and as well as the people, practicing kendo. They were the warmest people and the most friendly and approachable, and that was a big surprise. So kind, and they were just like, I felt like family, But the minute they started practicing, they all had this fierce face, which I couldn't even do. But it was like quite incredible to see them transform when they got into fighting mode, and yeah.
I have a behind-the-scenes memorable moment about this kobudo. So what Peter was talking about was this Ryukyu martial art that uses a range of bizarre and strange and wonderful weapons. It's the sort of opposite of karate, which is also from Okinawa, Karate is famous for not using any weapons, it's just the bare fist. So kobudo is the opposite. You can use any sorts of weapons, they have a whole array. So we wanted to, but it's obviously less well known internationally, so we had it in mind to feature it in our show, but I think we were there for a week and we had 2 days remaining on Okinawa Island. We couldn't find a place that would have us and it wasn't working out. So we were discussing in the crew van, we'll probably have to give it up. So yes, well, what can we do? And then that's when the driver, Mr. Nakasone's ears pricked up and he chimed in that his mother's actually a kobudo champion and takes part in all sorts of championships. And so he was on the call to his mom, and her mom called the master. And we only had 2 days left, but the next day we had everything arranged for the next day. And Peter had a great experience too. It was a really cute local sort of setup, very real, very local. And Peter also learned how to use a stone mill handle as a weapon. He called it a batubo, I think. So they used something like that as a weapon as well. So it was a win-win on all sides. Yeah.
So many of these unexpected, serendipitous moments. Any other examples you can share with us? Stuff that when you film a show, when you film a documentary like that, things never really go according to plan. So what were some of the the surprises? And did they throw the intended story off course? And did you actually end up with more surprises that you could fit in this season?
Oh yeah, thankfully the surprises where we get scenes, and there are also other surprises where we can't get it. So in Hokkaido, there was, we wanted to feature a nature trail where the Ainu had put in some really high-tech sort of storytelling, a light show basically, that tells the story of an owl, because they have a legend about an owl. So we were really excited about filming that because they got in some really high-tech, it was a new way of telling their story in their own way. But then when we got there, they told us, oh, sorry, you can't film there anymore because it's in a national park. And the reason was that a single woodpecker had made its nest nearby. So, we couldn't film that. But I'm glad the woodpecker's being looked after. But, we have scenes like that. But, thankfully, we also have good surprises, like the crane dance you just saw. That was something that we didn't necessarily know about or plan to film going in. But they were doing it, so we were invited and we went along, and it turned out great.
Well, one big challenge I thought was the rain. It was so rainy season in Japan, and but I'm amazed how the camera manages to avoid the.
This was in the Ryukyu, yeah. We had good weather else for the other two, but for the southernmost, Ryukyu, it was raining a lot. So we went to the castle, I think, 4 or 5 times just to try and get some shots without rain. But yeah, we seemed to be able to manage in the end, yeah.
Well, someone on our YouTube page has asked, is there anything you guys wish you had time to explore more this season?
Well, yes. We basically have 2 weeks per episode, so that's a really firm cutoff date. And talking personally, Ryukyu is such a really spread out group of islands, and we went to one that wasn't too far from the main island of Okinawa, but there were lots more islands with great stories further along that that are really exotic, even for Japanese people, that I would have loved to have explored, but maybe next time.
Yeah. And would you say, there's another question because someone's asking for a third season already. So no pressure, Sham, but are there plans for a third season? And do you guys have any suggestion or any cultures, any histories that you would personally love to explore if there was a season 3?
Right. Yeah, we explored that in season 2. I think if they're looking at all the episodes, and I think when we were going through the research, we found there was just so much more to tell, especially when you come from, when it's a very large country like Japan. So I think if we could have turned back the clock, maybe 1 or 2 more episodes where we could have explored other areas. But should we commission a season 3, we are actually excited to come back to Southeast Asia. There are 2 options, right? One was coming back to look at Laos, Vietnam, Philippines. There were other empires that we were exploring, and I think it's very exciting now with Asia opening up again. Another thing, just as a teaser, maybe even India. Peter has got great experience traveling to India, and the Indian history is huge and very varied. And we feel that there are many, many stories there to tell from the dynasties of long time. And visually, too, would be quite spectacular. So maybe that. Yeah.
And you guys, personally, any cultures, histories you think it's worth looking at as well?
At the end of every season, I go, okay, that's the last one. I'm not going to do another one again. And then when I get a call from Dom, it's like, yeah, okay, straight away. So,
we'll give you a year to rest.
And meanwhile, Dominic is like, shall we make him ride an elephant this time?
Yeah.
Yes.
No, anywhere. Every country has such an interesting story, and there's so many themes that would be possible. I don't know.
Yeah, South Asia, I think, because we got a lot of viewers in India, I think, a lot of comments on YouTube, interested and maybe asking. And also, I think there are lots of cultural links to Southeast Asia. So I think that would be an interesting, eye-opening topic to explore.
Yeah, would love that.
Yeah.
And yay, we have our first question. Which scene has the most retakes? Oh yeah, that's a good question.
Can't remember,
I think there are quite a few, right?
Yeah. Even for the audio, sometimes just I would be laughing with Dom because we would just not. I would not be able to get like tsutaya.
Oh yeah.
And just getting the right Japanese pronunciation was often a huge challenge when we would retake. And
it wasn't retakes, but I remember a particularly hard one to film, and we had to really edit creatively, was that scene, I don't know if you remember, of after they'd taken out the piece of Celadon pottery from the bottom of the sea. I decided that maybe, since Peter was in the water too, they should chat about it on the side of the boat. But actually, it was really rough, and the cameraman didn't have anything to hold on to. So, it was, so we had to get a bit more than, so that we could be sure to cut around it. And so, I think that was a hard one for you guys.
We went somewhere else to redo it, if I remember.
Yeah, there was one bit that was the current was too strong, so we had to, behind the scenes.
I think they were getting knocked about by the waves.
Yeah, we were
trying to get their lines out.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Hi, I'm Cynthia. I just want to ask you, you've had weeks of filming, hours of footage, and limited number of screening. So what do you do with the rest of your footage? Are you going to reuse them in some way in the museums? Or?
I think that's one for Shamala.
We will I suppose we have the digital platform that we can cut shorter clips into more bite-sized, more specific themes. So we will use the YouTube or even our video on demand to put out shorter clips so that other parts of where they've been is not missed out. Yeah.
Well,
And can you tell us, like, what's the budget for this? I mean, it'd be interesting to know, you know, numbers.
My boss is sitting. I don't think so.
Actually, I want to know.
You want to know? It's a decent budget. I mean, that allowed us to allowed the team to spend that much time away and also comfortably and to shoot all that was needed. So it's from our Singapore documentaries platform. So we would like to do more of these, also for our Channel News Asia international audience, where we show a lot more of the region and what it is about. So yeah, decently funded.
Well, Clement, someone on YouTube has a question for you. From a curator's perspective, what other areas would you recommend that this season can go into for Japan or say subsequent seasons?
Well, I have to say that I haven't watched the full episode yet, so there might be a lot that might have already been covered already. But I think, you know, Japan is such a fascinating place that has so much interactions that you know have been involved with the world history. I think, you know, even with 1 or 2 episodes, it's not going to be enough, and I think that leaves more for us perhaps to cover in if there is a season 4, poor Peter. But you know, we look towards more of these kind of programs.
And if I may just start to wrap up, I think I'd like to, you know, get your take. What sort of lessons do you hope to drive home with this season?
Oh, well, maybe not just for this season, but in terms of what we're trying to achieve as a series, a couple of seasons now, is, you know, we all take, when we're busy with our everyday lives, we sort of take it for granted that things are the way they are. We probably think our culture's always been that way somehow. We've not really thought about it. But if you look underneath, you find that, you know, there are all these really interesting and fascinating chapters that led up to why things are like that, and, you know, the world we live in. So I think it's really empowering to know these, you know, when we live our day-to-days, when we're aware of this sort of side of our world. Just, you know, it just gives you another dimension almost, and a deeper understanding. So I hope that this season can help that with 4 more stories, and I hope we can keep going with this mission. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel it's really important to color history with more voices, more stories, and that's what I love about this. We get to hear historians or people passionate about history, just you know, people, the normal locals, and their side of the past, and we just have to break away from the idea of mono histories or just one version of history, and shows like this, I think, help to broaden and blur the lines. Yeah.
And may I just add to what Dom and Peter has said? You know, I really want to thank Peter, Dom, Shamala, and everyone in the crew for bringing this series back again, because what you have covered is exactly what, you know, the Asian Civilization Museum, the ACM, is representing. We are really about the movement of people, goods, and idea across time and space. We are about the history of Asian port cities. We are about the artistic and cultural exchanges across all cultures. And I think, you know, it is important for us to bring this awareness to our people, and in a way to remind people that during these periods of time, there are so much shared artistic traditions, there's so much shared cultural heritage that, you know, if we don't talk about it, most of us would have taken for granted for many things.
Well, I hope this gets you excited for the rest of the episodes in full. Sorry, Sham, what would you like to add?
Sure, I can wrap it up. I was just going to say, I think when we decided on the series, we were very conscious of doing something that's historical, but at the same time, very relatable, very experiential. That's why you see Peter in talking to people from doing different things, food, culture, music, dance, the arts. So it's not just a history-based documentary, but it's very lived, right? And we wanted to also attract a younger audience to understand that whatever that's happened in history, not just in the books, is very relevant to what we do today. So there was a very conscious effort on our part to say, have Peter do different things so that it's very relatable. And that's why you see a lot more younger people this season, because we wanted the young to tell of their history and identity and why they are so proud of it. So this series features not just Japan, it also features South Korea. So episode 2 is on Joseon Dynasty. And again, the young people who were just, so proud of their roots. And I think that's amazing and things that we can learn too.
Yeah. And with that, that is the end of our panel. Remember, you can tune in from tomorrow, 9 p.m. on CNA for the full episodes. Thank you so much for being such a wonderful and attentive audience. And also thank you to our viewers on YouTube for all the questions. And we do have some refreshments prepared for you. You can go to the back of the room to grab a quick bite. All right, thank you and have a lovely weekend ahead.